Link do streamu. Pyk, pyk.
Jak wrażenia po wczoraj?
Ciężko było jak pod Stalingradem. Nie no, niedosyt trochę, bo była szansa na to.
Mogło być gorzej.
Mogło być gorzej, mogło być lepiej. Słucham?
Wiesz, już za 4 lata.
Ten karny, powiem ci, tak na osłodę był.
Ale to było takie dobre, niech mają.
No, już drugi raz nawet.
Co ty, co wy gadacie? Grosickiego trzeba było wpuścić wcześniej i tyle.
Pomyśl sobie jeszcze jakby Peszkin był na drugiej skrzyni.
O! By tam rwał.
Peszko nie pojechał, bo on przeczuwał już tam z tym alkoholem, będą jakieś przekręty.
No, dlatego się,
Po co?
tego się nie śpieszył. Słuchajcie, co ja chcę pokazywać na tym streamie. Niby doskonałe połączenie, ale... Nie wiem, czemu on się kręci. Nieskończoność, halo. Nie wiem, czemu czasem tak jest. Tak?
Chciałem zadać jedną ciekawostkę. Bo jak mieliśmy JavaScripta, używaliśmy Visual Studio Code. Teraz mamy Visual Studio.
Tak.
Czym się różni?
Bardzo dobre pytanie, też nie wiem.
Okej. Czekajcie, chyba muszę jeszcze raz... Ten stream działa, czy nie działa? Czy ten stream działa? Czy ktoś może to sprawdzić u siebie? Bo... Takie mieszane... I zaraz odpowiem na to pytanie. Chciałbym na nie odpowiedzieć na streamie może. Chciałbym na nie odpowiedzieć na streamie. A, dobra. Działa. Słychać mój dziwny głos. Dobrze, jaka jest różnica między Visual Studio Code a Visual Studio? Jest, ale ciężko ją określić. Oba produkty są tworem Microsoftu, przy czym Visual Studio Code jest tak naprawdę IDE, czyli Integrated Development Environment, a Visual Studio Code Visual Studio Code to jest jak gdyby odchudzona wersja Visual Studio. Tak, Visual Studio ma całą masę tam bajerów, jest trochę takim dużym kombajnem, natomiast Visual Studio Code ma jak gdyby taką core'ową funkcjonalność, do której można dołączać sobie pluginy. Ok? Czyli Visual Studio Code jest lżejszy. Na tym etapie rozwoju Visual Studio Code, niezależnie w jakim języku chcecie tworzyć, czy to będzie Python, czy C#, czy tworzyć projekty dla Unity, czy dla Unreala, znajdziecie odpowiednie paczki, które pozwolą Wam na używanie Visual Studio Code, po prostu. Tak? Natomiast przy takich projektach dotnetowych, czy nawet przy Unity chyba jednak standardem jest Visual Studio. Okay? Ale jedna taka uwaga, koniec końców kod, który piszecie jest tekstem i to, w czym piszecie, ma Wam pomagać, a więc równie dobrze wszystko, co tu tworzymy, moglibyśmy napisać w notatniku i też by zadziałało. Nie? Także nie ma tak naprawdę różnicy. Jakby ktoś z Was chciał profesjonalnie zająć się tworzeniem gier w Unity czy w Unrealu, to bardzo polecam zainwestowanie i kupienie takiego programu, który nazywa się ReSharper. Licencja to jest chyba 400 zł, ale jest świetny do pisania Unity i Unreala. Dobra. Od niektórych z Was dostałem już projekty. Bardzo mi miło, ale oficjalnie termin na oddanie projektu trwa dzisiaj o 12, a jeszcze bardziej nieoficjalnie macie czas do końca grudnia, bo różne rzeczy się dzieją w życiu. I wiem, że niektórzy postanowili, że najpierw zajmą się tym, żeby fryzura postaci się ruszała, a potem, żeby ruszała się postać. Trzeba mieć priorytety, totalnie to rozumiem. Także, a jutro właściwie spotkanie chyba nawet będzie krótsze, bo będzie takie podsumowanie. Postaram się pokazać te projekty, które otrzymam i może je odrobinę omówić. Porozmawiać z Wami jeszcze na temat GitHuba i czegoś, co nazywa się Unity Collab. czyli jak współpracować i opowiedzieć Wam trochę o tworzeniu gier multiplayer i dlaczego to jest problemem, tak? A my właściwie możemy sobie kontynuować nasze przygody, jeśli chodzi o pisanie. Niewiele nam zostało, ale jest parę problemów, które chciałbym z Wami rozwiązać, tak żeby ta gra była bardziej kompletna. Teraz tak, pierwszy problem jest taki, że jak popatrzymy sobie na tą moją postać, to ona może sobie wyjechać za ekran, co jest trochę bez sensu, ok? Dlatego tym zajmiemy się na sam początek. A, czy są może jakieś pytania? Czy coś chcielibyście wiedzieć? Tak. Wszystko jest super, żadnych pytań nie ma. Dobrze. O, to jest Roland. Hey Roland.
Hey.
Uh,
Looking. I probably don't understand this presentation.
now we're doing live coding.
Yes,
So-
I understand, but I mean your English, or you're speaking Polish. Of course. Okay.
Poradzicie sobie, jak będę gadał po angielsku?
No,
Proszę,
but
Kościa.
it's fine. Just do what you normally do because it's
Tak.
not familiar.
Okay, so I can talk a little bit in English just to include you, so you're not feeling excluded, I hope. Okay, so what are we missing? Few things. For example, one thing that should, as you can see, for now, our enemies are pretty static and they're not moving at all. And what is worse, they're not actually shooting at our player. So let's try and fix that. Let's first check how can we make them shoot. There should be a function to do the, okay. So basically what we'd like to do now is make our enemies shoot towards the player. And what they should do is basically we should choose one of the active enemies on the screen, spawn a projectile, a missile, and shoot it towards the player. And whenever the player is hit, we should end the game. Pretty simple. Of course, you could develop on that and, for example, make some kind of health pool for a player, but for the sake of that, we're not gonna do that. So let's go to our invader script, and we're gonna define through few properties in our class. So that's gonna be, let me see. Okay, we're gonna do something like serialized field just to make it visible in Unity. And I'm gonna do private, or I don't need to do private at all. I'm gonna do missile attack rate. So basically, how often should we spawn the missile going from enemies towards the player? And I'm going to set it, for example, to spawn every 2 seconds. Actually, okay, that's better. So after 2 seconds, and then every 2 seconds, we're going to spawn a missile. Is that clear? Tak, it's all clear. Okay. So let's go to our start, and we're gonna do good old invoke repeating, and we're gonna create new function and call it missile attack. We're gonna start the call of that function after missile attack rate, and then call it again every 2 seconds. The missile attack rate is going to be exposed to Unity engine so that you can configure it as well. And maybe you could build on that, and as player shoots the enemies, maybe you could increase the missile attack rate to make the game more difficult. The function is, of course, not created yet. Therefore, we have those red squiggly line. And cool thing, I don't know whether I've shown you this, but Visual Studio Code is trying to be helpful. And you can see that yellow bulb with red X next to it. And what you can do is press on it, and it's gonna find an issues that appear in your line and try and help you solve those. So of course we're using nameOf, and we know that we are passing a method here, method name, to invoke repeating. So from here I can choose generate missile attack as a function, as a method, and it's gonna solve our problem. So if I'm gonna click that, it's gonna even do a beautiful prompt that's gonna show what is going to be the body of it. So I can choose that, and it's gonna return void. Hello and welcome. Today's class is in English because we have a guest from Netherlands. But I can wait like 3 minutes for you to unpack and settle down, so you're not gonna get lost. Myślałem, że się poddałaś, ale spoko. Okay, so today we're gonna make our enemies shoot towards the player, and also next thing we're gonna do is to move the horde of our enemies from top to bottom as game progresses, right? Because one way our player can lose the game is being shot down by a missile, and other is for the horde of the enemies to reach the bottom of the screen and just destroy the player. Daj znać, jak będziesz gotowa na pisanie, to ci powiem, co dodaliśmy. W razie dodaliśmy 2 linie, także nie powinno być problemu. Ile jest?
Tam mniejszy obstawiałeś?
Ja na Chorwację.
To ja będę.
Japonia trafiła? Fuck. The Japan just scored a goal. Yeah, and I bet my money on Croatia, so...
Na co większy był kurs?
No Japonia.
O,
Oj, oj, oj.
No, sklepali Francuzów. A nie, czekaj.
Nie. Tłusa... Jak on tu trafił? O ja, okej. Jak tam jakieś kłopoty?
Co mieliśmy zaznaczyć?
Coś miałoby się zalogować.
Co mieliśmy zaznaczyć tutaj?
A.
Dopiero jest załadowane.
Spoczko. Jak masz problem, to tutaj będzie lampka, nie? Możesz kliknąć i wybrać Create Method, bo chcesz stworzyć metodę. No tak. Tak, i nawet widzę, że masz... I kliknęłaś? Słaby laptop. Działa?
Teraz się okaże. Nie, ładuje się jeszcze.
Ua.
No,
Jezu.
ona ma po prostu...
Mm,
No nie wiem, no bo
Okej.
kliknęłam, więc jak przyszło.
spoko. Masz? Pyk. U góry dodaliśmy to. To jest tempo strzelania rakietą, bo teraz robimy, żeby nasze inwadery strzelały rakietą. Invaders, CS. I'm gonna tell you a story in the meantime. I got scratched by my friend's cat, and it happened to me previously with different cats because that's what they do, they scratch you. But this time I've got some kind of cat scratch fever or an infection. It hurts like hell. I have to take antibiotics and other stuff like a balm. So to sum it up, I hate cats. Dog wouldn't do it, like never.
Koty wyczuwają, że
Tak, tak, dokładnie. Masz to? Ok, i dodaliśmy jeszcze w start oto i pod spodem to Private Void Missile Attack. Missile.
tutaj to cały czas podkreśla ten missile atak. Dlatego miałam dodać tu właśnie... atak.
There's a missile attack. Oh, wygenerowałaś metodę invoke repeating. Nie, to, skasuj to.
Jak to się robi?
Nie, skasuj to.
To?
No całe, zaznacz i skasuj. Wszystkie linijki.
A, bo to się zrobiło.
Tak.
Dobra.
Pyk, tego też nie ma.
I miało się po prostu missile atak zrobić, a nie
Tak.
invoke.
Czyli możesz kliknąć
Tak? I wtedy tu z boku.
tylko, tak, generuj metodę missile attack.
Po prostu kliknę.
Tak. O, no i teraz się zgadza.
Okej.
Tego zmień to na void i środka się pozbądź. A to, czemu ci świeci na czerwono?
No właśnie, nie wiem. Wcześniej nie świeciło. Missile atak.
A zdefiniowałaś to u góry?
Ty zrobiłam?
Maybe you have a typo. Podejdź, kliknij na tą podpowiedź. Tak, napisałaś to, widzisz? Nawet ci
Z
podpowiedź.
jakiej litery, bo to jest to.
No, to może być z wielkiej litery. Nie ma tragedii. Tak. Okay, we can. Everybody is settled. Japan scored a goal. We can move on. Okay, so basically, what we need to do is to instantiate a missile here. So what I'm going to do first is to, where is it? I assume it's somewhere here. Okay, what we need is to have a reference to missile prefab, because we're gonna create a game object that has a graphic representation on the screen. So that's gonna be private. No, I don't need to use private. It's gonna be projectile. I'm gonna call it missile prefab. And that's one cool thing we did. We have the laser, which our player is shooting towards the enemies, which has a class of projectile. And then we're gonna use the missile, but also it will be a projectile. So we can reuse the same class for the same functionality. So I think it's time to create the prefab. Let's go to sprites, and here in sprites you will find the missile prefab. How is defined? Okay, it's rather simple. So we're going to just drag it out to our hierarchy. As you can see it here, that's the graphic representation of our missile. It's beautiful. And what we need to do is add the projectile script to make it run. Yep, it's going to disappear because the play was on, but you can drag it again and add the projectile script. And what is cool, we made it configurable, so I can just adjust the speed and make it maybe 25 to be a little bit harder. And then the direction is, of course, y-1, because the enemies are shooting from the top and the missile should go down. Cool. So this is all the configuration we need for the prefab. The only thing we have to do now is actually turn it into prefab. So I'm going to take it and drag it into prefabs folder. And as you can see, it has turned into a prefab. So now we can instantiate it from the code. Troszkę za szybko? Okej. Czy coś powinienem powtórzyć, czy po prostu poczekać? Yes. No. What I did actually is took a sprite and dragged it into hierarchy, which will automatically create the game object with a sprite renderer, because the sprite is its graphical representation. And then all I did is to add the projectile with a given set of properties. And then I dragged it from the hierarchy to the prefabs folder to create a prefab that I can reuse in my code.
Okay, so I didn't miss anything.
Great! Oczywiście. Okay, so now, if it all works, we can remove the missile from the hierarchy. We're going to spawn it from the code. If I go to my invaders, now you should see at the very bottom of your invader script the serialized field which we added, which is the missile prefab, and it's of course set to none because we didn't drag any prefab into it. So it's not going to work if we try to use it from the code because of the missing missile prefab, which has the value of null right now. But I can just go to my prefab folder, click and drag the created prefab, and just drop it right here. Okay. Oh, and just to do a little bit of sidetrack, if you're gonna create more complex game, you're not only going to be working with stuff like game objects that have representation on the screen, but you will be working with lots of data. Imagine a game like Escape from Tarkov, where you have lots of guns and lots of attachments to it, each and every one with a different set of configurations. That's a lot of data, not only the 3D objects. And when it comes to configuring and managing data, Unity has this concept of scriptable objects. And it's very, very cool because you can create the objects that are easy to configure from the editor and have no representation, so you don't have to care whether it's a sprite renderer or some kind of 3D mesh. You can just create the data and then attach it to different things. So if someone would like to dive into Unity for real, definitely Google out what is scriptable object and how to use it. Okay, moving on. Tak? Nie możesz tak dodać?
Tutaj.
Bo ci to, no, te twoje cudowne maki. A ty co, masz też maka? Dzisiaj. Dla odmiany. To pewnie po prostu głupi Mac, który nie chce odświeżyć konfiguracji, gdzie my to mamy. Tylko.
Nie.
Nie?
To może zapiszę tamto.
Czekaj. A ty masz. O ja zapominam. To tyle czasu nie pracowałem na Macu, że zapominam, że to jest.
Cały czas mi się włącza. Czy nie wiem, czy teraz to nie zajmie trochę czasu.
Ale to powinno siedzieć w tle, tak czy inaczej.
Okay.
Invaders. Columns.
A teraz to może zapisz?
Powinno być zapisane. Tylko że. Czemu nie chce się odświeżyć? A masz. A, to jest. Chyba wiem, co to może być. A nie, to jest. Eksterny. Nie, masz ustawiony Visual Studio for Mac. O Jezu. O Boże, jakie... Ja wiem, że to jest, że jesteś pewnie hipsterem i to jest takie szpanerskie, żeby mieć Maca. Aha! Projectile. Okay. Spróbujemy jeszcze inaczej. O! Czemu on... Nie wiem, co się dzieje, ale... Pytanie, jak to otwierałaś, bo... O! Teraz to tak, dobrze. Pyk i... O to chodziło. Jak podejrzewam. Czyli brak tego.
Się nie zapisałam.
Czemu on nie chce tego zapisywać? On pokazuje, że ten plik jest zmodyfikowany. Chyba nie.
A zjedź sobie na dół. Ale invader i tutaj z kolei to lisy musisz sobie przeciągnąć do...
Ale czemu?
Nie, no, odciąć. No i o, wszystko jest wszystko. O, dobra, dziękuję Ci bardzo.
Zapisz i zakończ. Się dzieją jakieś rzeczy. Niestworzone. Teraz to masz, ale chciałbym też, żebyś mogła kodzić normalnie jak biały człowiek. O. Okej, teraz powinno być spoko. Okay, moving on. I think we can finally add the code that will spawn our missile. So, basically, what we have to do here is iterate and loop through all of our invaders, so of our children, and then find a way to spawn the missile. So let's do that. What is cool is that we can use for each loop. Did we discuss the for each loop, or did we just discuss the for loop?
I think there was only the for loop.
Okay, so that's actually pretty cool. This is our way to loop in C#. There are a few, but when we were writing a for loop, there was this int I index that we had to track and check in every loop whether we have finally finished the loop because of some logical statement inside of it. But this is actually a slightly better way to loop through the objects in an array, because we don't have to track the index. It just states for every object in some kind of array, do the stuff. So we'd like to iterate through our invaders. So I can just write transform invader in transform. So this may seem kind of strange, but I will explain it, definitely. Okay, so we know what a transform is. It is just a game component that is being attached, that is being taken from the game object to which our script is attached. In our case, this transform, so this transform is gonna be obviously this, right? Or even this transform. But in Unity engine, if you have children, you can access their transform using that transform. They're interconnected when you have a parent-child relationship. So here, actually, our invader will be a value of game object representing the invader child of our invaders horde. Okay, so we have to, and here, inside these parentheses, we can do something with each single invader. So if we shoot our invader, what we do is we deactivate it. So the first thing that we should do in our loop for each invader is to check where it's active. So we can check for the active in hierarchy property, and if it's not active, it should definitely not spawn the missile. So we can just return out of the loop.
Can you scroll up?
Yep. And here's one interesting thing about loops compared to functions. If I type the return keyword inside of the function, it's going to just terminate the function, right? We know that. But if I write the return word inside of loop, it's going to just end that iteration of the loop and take the next object from the array and start the loop all over. Okay?
That's actually new to me. Is this Unity specific or that?
Oh no, sorry. Oh my God. Of course I made up. Yep, it shouldn't be return. It should be continue. Thank you. Yep. The keyword I was looking for is, of course, continue, which means continue this loop, meaning take the next object from an array. Good catch.
I've done it
Okay. And then here we're gonna have some kind, if there's second if, some kind of logic stating when to spawn a missile. Okay? So for now, I'm going to set it to true. So this if statement going to run like every single time. But this is just for now. So now, if you are inside of that if, we're going to instantiate the missile prefab. So I'm going to just instantiate missile prefab in position of given invader with rotation of non-mean quaternion identity. So you should very well know this function already. It is being used to dynamically spawn game objects in your game. And if we spawn a missile, we're gonna break. And this keyword actually terminates the whole loop. So there's a difference. The continue will make you exit the loop, but it's gonna continue running it with the next object from an array, and break just gonna exit the loop. It's just like return for a function. Okay, and we do that because, well, we already created a missile for that run. Therefore, we can just end the function. Okay, and let's see how this works and whether it works. So I'm going to run it, and I hope that we have a missile every 2 seconds, but as you can see, it's always being shot by the same invader. So we have to find a way to randomize that. Okay? So let's add some randomization. It should be cool if we could make our missile, the chance to spawn our missile be greater the less invaders we have on screen to make the game harder. But I'm gonna do something simple for now. So I'm gonna use random value and check, bless you, fully qualify. I believe this comes from Unity engine, but we have that already, so I should be able to just use. Oh, okay. Because we have Unity mathematics. So maybe now. Nope. System random.
Because there's also another random.
Okay.
No, it's one.
Okay. Oh, god damn it. Okay, let's fully qualify it. Unity engine random. Okay. So now there's like 50% chance that we're gonna spawn the missile from a given invader. You could make it less, but we're gonna fix that in a second. So let's see that now. And here's one. Okay, now the missile is going to be shot by a different opponents. Okay. But as I mentioned, I would like to make the chance of spawning a missile higher the more invaders we already killed. So we're gonna do some calculations here, and we're gonna add some stuff. What we need is integer saying total invaders, which we'll use to calculate the total invaders, and it's gonna start as, I believe, columns. Oh, it's a calculated property, so total invaders. Okay, so this is kind of cool, and I'm gonna show you how it works. We need the total number of invaders. We know that we can calculate it as our script starts by just multiplying the columns of our grid times rows in our grid, right? So what I can do is say it's calculated and it's columns times rows. So see the difference that this is not the assignment operator, it's the calculated property operator. So this value is being calculated based on these two values. Okay? Basically, yeah. You can find similar stuff, for example, in Swift. So we have defined the columns and rows above. We know it's 5 times 11, so 55. So we can calculate that value based on the columns and rows. Tak?
Czy ja zmieniałam część using, bo mi podkreśla.
Tak, bo zobacz, że u mnie jest równa się i jeszcze strzałka.
Aha, okej.
Tak, dlatego, no właśnie. Ale to od razu też pokażę. Of course, if I'll try to create it as that, the compiler is going to be not happy. Okay? Therefore, the arrow.
Jak zmieniłam liczbę kolumn w Unity, to też będzie liczba z Unity, czy...
Jeszcze raz?
Jak zmieniłam liczbę kolumn w Unity,
Mhm.
to weźmie liczbę z Unity, czy z kodu?
Czekaj. Weźmie liczbę z Unity, dlatego że to jest serialized field.
Aktualizowałam.
To będzie się aktualizowało na podstawie Unity. Okay, moving on, we need another property, and that's gonna be called amount killed. So how many have we killed? And we're going to start with 0. And then we need and then we need amount alive, and as you can imagine, that's gonna be total invaders. Oh, it's gonna be calculated, of course. Total invaders times amount killed. So now we know a few things. How many invaders we have at the start, how many have we killed, and how many is alive. One thing to do is to, of course, update the amount of invaders killed when we kill an invader. So now we can just do in, how did I name this? Amount killed. I could just do amount killed plus plus every time we kill an invader. Okay, so the last thing to do is go to our missile attack, and here we can do something like amount alive, right? Because the more invaders are alive, the less is the chance to spawn the missile. I'm gonna bring it back, bring it up so it's more visible. And here are two important things I would like to discuss. We define the amount alive here as a calculated property. And here is where we access it. So the cool thing about the calculated property is whenever you run it, it is recalculated. So basically, if you take a look at that, this is kind of like a one-line function, right? Because the function is being run whenever we access it, right? And whenever we ask for the value of amount alive, this code is actually being run. So the amount of killed enemies is always the current proper value. Okay? And other thing, and if someone can answer it, I'm gonna give you something sweet. Here's the prize. What is potentially wrong with that code? Is there any problem you see with that code, with the line 61? Is there any potential issue with the line 61? Yes, there might be a scenario where we divide by 0 at the end of the game, right? Because the amount of enemies will drop, and at the end of the game, that value is going to be 0, and there might be a scenario where we divide by 0. Almost, but good answer. Okay, we of course can prevent that here. For example, just doing if amount killed is equal to total invaders, we could just do that, right? And then here, could just check for amount alive being greater than 0. Okay? And that's how we can handle that. Basically, that additional logical statement will take care of that. So, let's run it. Tak? Tak, do tej? Tu na razie, we don't have anything here, but basically, as you can imagine, this is your end game scenario. You killed all the enemies. It's time to reload the game or show some kind of score screen, or maybe move user to another level with increased difficulty, right? Mhm. Tylko szybko zobaczę, czy to działa. I would assume there's gonna be missile. But there's not, if amount alive is bigger than 0, amount alive.
The chance is just very small.
Oh yeah, that's actually true. Yeah, because 1 divided by 55, the chance could be really small. So maybe bump it up, and let's do, starting value is 55, so 1 every 10th. We could parameterize that, but let's try and change that value just to see whether it works. I start to have some doubts.
It should be working, but I don't know how you change the chance. I would just lower the value from 1 to 05, and they should add some intervals.
So you change the value to that value?
Yeah.
To 55?
No, I changed it to 0.5.
Um,
The bigger you make this number, the smaller.
oh,
The bigger you make the number, the smaller the chance. So I did this.
oh, okay. Yep. Of course. Yeah. Yep. And let's be patient. Okay, let's start killing these guys. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Gotta hit them. Okay. So yeah, maybe let's change that. And of course, this could be made into a parameter, right? But if you see that you have some kind of missile on your screen, let's take 5 and we're gonna move to next feature. Dobra, zróbmy 5 minut przerwy. Ja włączę dźwięk. Czy ktoś potrzebuje pomocy? Dobra, Miłosz, działa ci? Działa ci. To pomóż ludziom. 1-1. Jestem. Okay, moving on. As we just talked during the break, there are a few of you that will probably like and are as passionate about games as I to become, game developers, as you can find here on Just Join IT. The industry, as you can tell, is pretty good paying, but the number of the game studios in the world is limited, and maybe not all of you have found Unity to be so interesting to continue down that path. For those who'd like still to somehow just join the IT, the pun, join the IT and use the knowledge you accumulated on that workshop, you should definitely take a good long look on .NET. The .NET platform is being used all over the world to build web services, and not only that, it's very popular and very well documented, and it's of course using the C# language. So if you just go for .NET tutorials, you'll find plenty, right? And there's lots of step-by-step tutorials how to get started. Our company is using .NET extensively to build the web services. I don't know about Triple. There's a mix of PHP, Node.js, and .NET.
Yeah, PHP we try to phase out
Because it's PHP.
yeah, but Node.js is really popular. But I myself like
.NET better. Yeah, I can definitely understand why that is. So maybe that's gonna be your go-to. Hey, if you'd ask me nicely, maybe next year I can prepare some kind of simple .NET workshop if you guys will be into it. Or maybe I'll just do it because I'm so cool. So moving on. We're not gonna be able to complete the game 100%, but let's just continue adding stuff until times run out. So for now, the problem is that our one thing I forgot to mention. Okay, so there's for each, of course, and there's for loop, right? For int I equals 0, I less than transform child count. I don't write this, just take a good look and listen. So these are the two basic types of loops we have in Unity, in C#. There are others. For example, there's this cool add-on, let's call it, called the link queue, which allows you to build the loops more declaratively. But when it comes to games, compared to web services, there is one important thing, which is performance. And this loop, using the index counter, is always gonna loop faster in Unity than for each. So by a rule of thumb, you may stick to the for int I loop whenever you need performance, even though this one for me is more elegant and simpler. But if you see that your loop is running too slow, rewrite it to use the for int I loop. Okay? Cool, moving on. So currently our invader swarm is not moving at all. So let's fix it, and we're gonna do something cool, which is gonna show you another part of Unity. So I'm gonna create another serialized field, and I'm gonna introduce new Unity class, which is animation curve. I'm going to call this speed curve. And we're going to take a look in Unity what it is and how it works. And you will find the curves in programming like all over. Or if you're doing graphics, you'll find them too. The Bezier curve, for example, which is used for animations, right? But here we're going to use it to calculate the speed of our swarm. And here below the missile prefab, if you're lucky, you should see the speed curve as a available field, and I can click it, and it's going to open the curve window. And there's nothing there yet, but below you can find some presets. Okay? So for example, that. So I can make my invader swarm move slower at the start and then faster at the end based on some properties, right? We're gonna use that curve as a speed multiplier. So what I'm gonna do is grab that starting point here at the 0, 0 and move it up to 0.5 to give some kind of initial speed to my swarm, and then I can add another key by clicking right here and change my curve, for example, to look like that. Meaning, at the very start, when we have all the enemies in our swarm, the swarm will move with 0.5 multiplier, and then as we kill the enemies, it's gonna speed up to make the game harder. And of course, you can add the keys using the right click and modify the curve to your need. But it's not only for speed. You can use it like for any kind of parameterization, for example, to change the colors or do the mentioned animations, right? This is just to make the game seem more lively. Okay, so with that done, we can go back to code, and we're gonna need another calculated property, and I'm gonna call this %killed, which is gonna be equal to amount killed divided by total number of invaders. Mm-hmm.
Could you explain why is Visual Studio making a big fuss about those ints not being called with capital letters?
What not being named with?
It's even on your %kill gear naming rule relation.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yep. So basically, as you code stuff, there will be some kind of naming standards. One you know already is that we tend to name the stuff using camel case, right? But and this is like my standard taken from web development and from writing TypeScript code. But definitely C# is gonna have its own. So if I just search for C# naming convention, right, you see how should we name stuff. For example, let me just extend that. I believe what we have here is the property, and the standard convention calls for a Pascal case naming. Okay, this is yep, it's gonna be property name. So you can find the standard, and it differs across languages. For example, for Python, you will find that most of the stuff is being called with underscore. Okay? Does it matter? Yes and no. It's always good to adhere to a standard proposed by people who created the language or are smarter than us. On the other hand, you might stick to your own standards, especially if you're, for example, joining a team that for any reason decided to deviate from the standard. But they're there, and they're for you to know them and use them. I don't in this example because my brain is still working on that TypeScript naming standard. But yeah, for example, stuff that is private, for example, you often find to have underscore before the name. And why is that? Does it change anything? It would change actually how the value works. It would change it access modifier in Dart language. But here in C#, it is just a standard and information that whenever you take a look at given property, you know it's private just by looking at the name, because it has the underscore. So you don't have to go to the definition and take a look at the access modifier. Just know by looking at the I've seen different standards. For example, some people would do stuff like, I don't know, you could do amount of killed private, but that would be stupid, right? So yeah. So whenever you're using given language or learning given language, you could always take a look at the standards that are in place. Does that answer your question, my friend?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay. Moving on. What I would like to do is to move our wonderful swarm. So we're gonna need some stuff. Okay. We're gonna need to know the direction in which it moves. So I'm gonna do, I don't need a private, a vector 3, and it's gonna be direction, and I'm gonna assume that it starts moving right. Okay? And then another thing that I'm gonna need is reference to camera. Okay, and what it is and why. Camera is just another game object that is represented by the camera class, and you might want to access it for many reasons. For example, if you'd like to perform some kind of zoom to a given place on your map, you might want to change the transform of the camera. Okay? There's also, just to digress a little bit, as you probably play the games, you've seen something called cutscenes, right? The moments in the game when you don't have the direct control of your player, but the plot is being moved on by displaying this in-game short scene, right? And don't try to do those in code. There's a special package called Cinematic, I believe, in Unity that is created just for doing the cutscenes. Okay, if you ever need those. Okay, so first we need to access the camera and instantiate it. Give it a value. And what we're gonna do is do camera main. So here we just store the value and cache it. There are a few other things I should mention here. Like, remember when I was talking about the software architecture patterns? This is a singleton, or something that resembles singleton. So here, from the camera, I can directly access the instance of it. It might change a little bit if your game plays different. For example, I don't know whether you've ever played a game with a split screen. So the screen is like, for example, Mario Kart, right? You have the screen split horizontally, and you're driving in the upper part of the screen, and your friend is driving in the bottom part of the screen, right? And then you have two cameras rendering two different sets of graphics in your game. Therefore, it will not work. Also, why we are doing that? Why are we doing that? Whenever you start a script and you know there are some properties you will reuse often, for example, in update, and remember that the update is running periodically throughout your game, like every single frame, or it's supposed to, right? You would call the camera main every single time in the update function. Calling this is costly when it comes to performance. Therefore, we cache it in a field, okay? This is done for performance reasons. And every single time you have to access some kind of game object, like for example, where is it? Oh, for example, sprite renderer is a component from the game object I am accessing. Here, in Awake, in this case, I'm also caching it instead of calling getComponent, right, every time I animate the sprite, right? Here I'm using the cached version of my component, of the sprite renderer, instead of writing this call has its cost when it comes to performance, right? Therefore, we tend to configure our scripts and use the cached versions of the stuff we need. Cool. Okay, let's finally make it move and let's finally make it work. So, there are a few things we have to consider. For example, we can't allow our swarm to move outside of the bounds of the camera, right? So let's start with that. Let's go to update, and first let's decide about the bounds of our camera, right? We don't want our swarm to start, for example, here as it's moving left or right, and end partially in our camera. Thankfully, there is a simple function that will help us to calculate the viewport world to game world. So I'm going to just do vector 3, and that's going to be the left edge. I'm going to say how do I name it? Camera underscore. Okay, we can go with that. Camera viewport to screen point, and I'm gonna pass vector 3 0 here. Okay, so this is the left edge because there's a point called 0 0 0 in the upper left corner of my screen. And then I'm going to take the right edge by using vector free right. So what we're passing here is the point in relative values from 0 to 1, where the 0 is the left edge and the 1 is going to be the right edge. So it should be viewport toward point, not the screen point. Vector right, let's change this, because we'd like to calculate the edges in our word units. Jaki jest wynik?
To wstawiałeś na...
Mhm.
To nie weszło.
Ani trochę nie weszło.
Ale jeszcze może być zwycięzcą moralnym.
Niestety. Okay. Then we can find the new position for our swarm. So I can just update the position, taking a look at the current direction, and then we can use our speed curve and evaluate its value based on percent killed, and we have to adjust for the time delta time, and let me just drop it so you can all see it. Okay, so we have our swarm and we'd like to use it left and right. Okay, we have the direction, which is gonna be right or left, depends how we move. We have our speed curve, where we evaluate the percent killed, so we get the value from the from our curve changing from 0.5 to 1, and then of course time delta time to adjust for the FPS. So let me, I'm going to go to the code just in a second, but if I go to my speed curve right here, what we have here is the speed is of course the y-axis, okay, and then the percent, well, yeah, a percent of the enemies killed is on x-axis. So if I didn't kill any enemies yet, the speed will be multiplied by times 5. And if I almost killed all enemies, for example, there's one left, right, the speed is going to be multiplied close to a 1. That's why we are using the curve. Okay? Alrighty then. So let's see what happens now, because it's not going to work, as you can imagine, because we're not using the left and right edge, but they're slowly advancing to the edge of the screen, which is kind of cool. Yeah, but this is the problem. Now they're just moving out of the camera bounds. Okay, so let me know if your invader swarm is marching in the unison together, and then we can move to properly using the camera edge and moving them towards the player. Who has it working, or who needs help? Because of your MacBook, of course. Zobaczmy. Nie ruszają się. tutaj może być parę problemów. Zobacz, twoja początkowa prędkość zaczyna
Właśnie
się...
ja to zmieniałam, ale to się odskakuje.
Tak, bo ponownie, jak masz uruchomioną grę, to Unity myśli, jest uruchomiona, nie?
Tak, tak.
Unity myśli sobie, że sobie testujesz rzeczy,
Okej.
tak? I każda wartość, którą przypiszesz, on myśli, a to jest tylko dla testów, a więc jak zatrzymasz, to cofnę ją do tego, co było. Także zatrzymujemy grę, pyk, przyciągamy to do połowy. Tutaj można sobie dodać klucz i poprawić wygląd tego. Klikamy. I mamy szczerą nadzieję, że... Cudownie. Nie tak wiele. Okay, so now we have to detect the edge of the screen and tell our enemies to advance, and then we have to kill our player. Because of the lack of time, we're not gonna build any kind of UI here, but what I would do is just slap some canvas and just assign some points to different prefabs of the enemies and make some score count and maybe lives of our player. But since this is our almost last meeting, then we're not gonna do it. So let's loop again. I'm gonna use for each because I'm lazy. So can do the same loop as we did before. Okay, first things first, we're gonna see if our enemy is active. So invader, game object, active in the hierarchy, and if it's not active in the hierarchy, meaning we set it to not active, meaning we already killed it. Let's just continue the loop. And this is again the early return, right, or early continue I mentioned in our previous meetings. Okay, we have basically to check whether any invader is at the left edge or at the right edge. So let's do just that. If direction is equal to vector 3 right and invader position x is greater of or equal to right edge of the screen x, and let's adjust for -1 unit, then we're gonna do stuff. And of course, then if that's not true, we have to check for other direction. Vector 3 left and invader position x, and we're gonna check for left edge x -1. So they're pretty much the same.
I would say +1 here.
Oh yeah! And that's why you are an architect and I am not. Yep, of course. Tak?
Just go up a little.
Yep. Here I changed it to viewport to word point. Take note.
Yeah, okay.
1. Plus 1 minus 1. Can I carry on? Okay.
Umie na końcu wymagać średnika, to mamy się...
Nie powinno wymagać od ciebie średnika, bo to jest if.
Otwórz i zamknij klamrę, jeżeli nie masz.
Czyli że mi się... Aha.
Po idze.
Otwarta, zamknięta... A... Ma? A, jeszcze raz za. A, dobra, okej.
To już kiedy składasz do jakiejś firmy na game developera? Tak? Spoko. Na pewno coś sobie znajdziesz jako game developer.
Te ostatnie zajęcia, to ty się pochwalisz tym, co robiłeś? Bo jeszcze w sumie nic nie mówiłeś o swoich osiągnięciach.
Ja nie mam żadnych osiągnięć. Nie, no, jak gdyby to, co robiłem, jak gdyby zacząłem uczyć się Unity, zacząłem robić projekt, potem pomyślałem, dużo lepiej będzie go zrobić w Unreal Engine, bo to będzie łatwiejsze. I Unreal Engine rozwiązał połowę moich problemów, które miałem z Unity, a potem okazało się, że ta druga połowa, którą rozwiązywał Unity, jest nie do rozwiązania w Unrealu. I muszę cofnąć się z powrotem do Unreala. Także nie, przykro mi, ale nic wam nie pokażę, ale dla osób, które są na tyle kochane, mają dobre serduszko i obserwują mój kanał, już naprawdę niebawem, pewnie w przyszłym, a może nawet w tym tygodniu, pojawią się kolejne rzeczy związane z Unity na moim kanale. Także polecam subskrybować, dajcie łapkę w górę, zwłaszcza, że brakuje mi tyle, żeby w końcu zacząć tłuc hajs na tym kanale. Więc grube centy, na razie nie dolary, ale centy będą tam wpadać. Okay, each time this is true, we're gonna just advance row. And this is of course not created in our class yet, but if we use the help of generate method advanced row, we can generate that method here. And one thing we're creating two if statements here and calling the same stuff inside. So it's not the best way to write the code, but it's more readable than just shoving in one big logical if with ands and ors. If that could be some kind of production code, I would probably refactor it to a function that returns a boolean and takes some parameters. But I'm lazy today. So that's gonna be rather simple. I'm gonna do direction dot x times -1. So what that line is gonna do, let me bring it up, is it will change the direction of the swarm movement from left to right and from right to left, right? Because if right is 1, then -1 is left, so multiplying by -1 basically will make the movement switch from left to right. Okay. Also, we need to update our position a little bit to actually advance a row. So I'm gonna do transform position. This is the current position, and I'm gonna update it. Whoops. We're moving towards the bottom of the screen. Therefore, I'm going to subtract 1 from it, and then reassign it. And that's basically it. That's gonna move our swarm from left to the edge of the screen. Then it's gonna drop down and move towards right. So it's gonna move in that fancy pattern. Let's see. Is it working? It's moving, and shooting. And yep, it's magical. Yeah, it's crazy. Okay. So that should work. What else do we need? We need to kill our player, right? But maybe we have that already? Oh, okay. We can add that here. If you take a look at our missile, we created the prefab for it, but then we also would like to make it destroy our player. And previously, we created all these layers to assign our objects to specific layer. Of course, the missile should be, it's missile with an I, and I forget about it. But basically, we have to click on our prefab, which represents the missile, and assign it to the proper layer. So let's do just that. Okay, and then I'm going to check whether my enemies have, okay, so we have our enemies, and they also should be in the correct layer. So this is invader layer. As you can see, I shift clicked 3 of them just to change the property on all of them. So I can just click invader, and now we have to add one simple thing to our code. So let me just save that. Let's go to our player, and here we should handle the on trigger enter 2D, and I'm going to change the name of the argument to other so it's more readable. So whenever we have the collision, and the collision is a trigger collision instead of physical collision, we'd like to change whether the thing we collide with is an invader or a missile. And if that's the truth, we're gonna just destroy our player. So I'm gonna just write a simple if statement. If other game object layer is equal to layer mask, name to layer, and the layer is either missile or other game object layer is equal to layer mask, name to layer invader, and let me close that off. Then we can just destroy this game object. And basically, this is the other scenario that we would handle if we would build an UI showing some kind of death screen, right? Because our player was destroyed. And there are two possibilities here. Either you're being hit by a missile, or the invader swarms go to the bottom and you hit one of the invaders. Just to remind you, this is logical OR, meaning this statement or this statement has to be true to evaluate whole logical statement to true. Let's test this. And to test this, I'm going to go to my prefab. I'm going to take the missile and I'm going to make it slow enough so that I can position my player right into its path. So let's see whether we can actually lose the game. Okay, that should be, that's wrong. Okay, let's check. Missile. This looks correct, but the question is whether we set up our physics to actually allow for that. This is going to be physics 2D. And can the missile interact with the player? It can. So what is our player missing? It has a collider, and then the missile has to have it has to have collider, and probably it has to have the rigid body to be taken. Yeah, okay. So what we're missing here is box collider 2D. And what we're missing here is, of course, the rigid body 2D. And we can set it to kinematic because we don't care about gravity or mass. And as I mentioned, when you are trying to use collisions, whether the trigger or not, one of the bodies has to have the rigid body and both bodies has to have the collider to calculate the collision. And I hope, still not working? Damn it! It's supposed to work.
Yeah, but better check maybe yours working.
Am I right and are you wrong? Shoot me. Come on! No, it's not working. God damn it!
Ale u mnie na przykład jest trochę bliżej, bo jakby u Ciebie rakieta przeleciała
Tak.
i nie kasuje rakietę, ale dalej nie kasuje, jakby nie kończy gry.
Kurde. Ja nie wiem, czy to jest bliżej, czy to jest lepiej.
Coś jest.
Coś? Tak, coś się dzieje.
Mamy interakcję.
This is a feature, not a bug. If you'd like your player to be killed, please pay $50 for the DLC. Produced by EA Games. Yeah. Let me check. This has a rigid body and it has a box collider. And then for our player, we need a box collider only. Oh, of course! We have to check is triggered to make it a trigger instead of collision. Yep. Thank you. Good catch. And now, hold for the big finale. Yep! We are dying! Okay. Okay. So, okay, maybe, just maybe, you'd like to handle it another way. So, let me just do something like that. I'm going to bring in the new package, but you know it probably. So I'm going to add Unity Engine scene management package. And instead of calling, well, maybe I could call destroy, but then I'm also going to kill scene manager, load scene, and I'm going to pass 0 to reload the scene. And as you know from our previous game, that should just restart the game, right? Oh, sorry. Okay. So what I did is I added the Unity Engine scene management, and this is the package that allows you to reload or load different set of levels. Just this. This is our restart, like the most stupid, the simplest way to restart the game.
Pokażesz jeszcze początek?
Mhm.
Mam jeszcze więcej tego using, to po prostu czegoś nie usunęłam.
No, znaczy, if they're displayed like in this grayish manner, this means they're not used by your code, so you can safely remove these. Only the ones with the full opacity are like definitely being used by your code. Yep. Oh, why we're passing 0 here? Okay, that's, well, yeah, that's actually pretty interesting. I was hoping to finish earlier, but let's discuss this. So you can basically pass a few things here. You could pass the name of your scene, which is being taken from Unity. You could pass the index, and very important thing, just check whether your game is reloading, restarting. But I'm going to show you one last thing to maybe share your project with your grandma or uncle. Okay. So, why is that 0? If you go to File and Build Settings, here you will find the build settings of your game. And here are all the scenes you'd like to include into that build. As you can see, it's just an array, so it starts with 0. Okay? But then, this is the most bare bone setting of the build I could do. If I click Build, and I'll find, and I just create some folder. Let's do Invaders game, and select that folder, and give Unity some. It's gonna build it into an executable that is gonna take a while. But this is basically how you can build the game to share it. As you can see, this is a build for a desktop, Windows, Mac, or Linux. But as I shown you before, you could also build for a web using WebGL technology. So I don't. Oh, okay, it's faster than I expected. And internal stuff. Okay. And now I have my game exported from Unity, and let's see, wonderful logo, and yeah, and you can zip it, ship it, upload to Steam, and get lots of money. And it should restart when I die. Yep. And how to close it? You can't for a time being. Yep, you have Alt F4. But let's check about the where we can build it to. Can we build it? Switch platform.
Wrzuciłbyś kod z playera?
Yep.
To nie jest.
The code.
Co ci nie działa?
Ja nie widzę.
Oops.
No mam, bo łapie mi, bo mi kasuje rakietę.
Nie mogę go wysłać. Czekaj, mogę go wysłać. Zrobimy tak.
Mam kolejny.
No come on. Upload as file. Okej. Będziesz miał jako TXT, ale ty sobie przekopiujesz po prostu. A tutaj zobaczmy. Komu to jeszcze nie działa?
Jest problem, bo na pierwszym inwajderze jak do 15 nie kończy, dopiero na trzecim rzędzie.
Jeszcze raz, co się...
Na trzecim rzędzie, jak one schodzą na dół,
Mhm.
to dotknięcie nie kończy gry. Że nie restartuje właśnie na pierwszym rzędzie, dopiero na trzecim się restartuje.
Zamyślę, tak ciężko się
A, może masz rację. Czyli cała paczka inwajdes musi zejść, żeby się... Dobra, nie ma.
Ja,
nie wiem.
tak, w sumie tak. To moglibyśmy to fiksować, ale strasznie mi się nie chce. Ale zobaczmy, czy jesteśmy w stanie to uruchomić na webie. So build settings, WebGL, build. I'm going to create new folder, call it Web Invaders, and try to build it to WebGL. And I hope it's gonna work. Tomorrow we're not gonna be coding. I'm gonna be reviewing the project sent by you. You have until midnight or later, of course, so no worries there. I'm gonna give awards to people who manage to build working projects, so that's gonna be cool. We're gonna discuss GitHub a little bit and Unity co-op, and I'm gonna mention the stuff about multiplayer. Tomorrow's meeting probably is gonna be shorter since this is everything we've done. If you found the Unity to be interesting piece of technology, then dive right in. You can find a job as a game developer. If not, I wish you all the best with your programming journey. For those who've never wrote a line of code before, I hope that was interesting and you at least learn a little bit and know that coding is not so scary. And if you're persistent and if you're positive about it, you definitely can figure that one out, right? Probably in the next year, you're gonna see more workshops. I would definitely like, we'll see. I'm gonna definitely announce this, and please finish the build so that we can run it in the browser. Of course, remember that one thing you could do is to hire yourself in some kind of game studio. The other thing you could do is, I'm going to show you this really quick. There's this a game launched like 2 weeks ago called Zero Sievert. It looks like this, so really retro look, and guy already sent like 30,000 of copies of that game, right, and made like enormous amount of money because he had a great idea. So your game doesn't have to be AAA, polished, 3D shader, wonderful piece of graphics. You just have to have something that will bring people to the screens. Yeah, it's a cool game. It's mix of Escape from Tarkov and Stalker and retro graphics, and it's really hard. Like if you've seen it, it's like pixelated 2D Escape from Tarkov, which is really cool.
Still, those graphics are quite hard to make.
Oh yeah, they are. Especially that the guy did the programming and the graphics all by himself. But that's kind of cool because you don't have to share the profit.
Yep.
Right? Come on, finish the build.